You can tell me. I know you've read more into Peter King. I'm still in the midst of working my way through his Football Morning in America column.
So good.
And he'll join us in an hour. Did he straight say that Purdy was a candidate for MVP or the leader for MVP?
I believe he used the F word, Mark, front runner.
Ooh.
I think he said front runner, and I will confirm that. But what he did say is that the MVP usually comes from the quarterback of one of the 4 top 2 seeds in either conference. And right now that would be Hurts and Purdy, and that would be Tua and Mahomes, I guess, based on, I don't know about records and tiebreakers and all the rest of it. But if you just take those 4, and then you look at those 4 quarterbacks.
No, you're right.
And
those are the 2 4-1 teams. Those are the only 2 4-1 teams in the AFC.
Well, there's 4-1s, and then there's 5-0s in the NFC. So,
right.
I mean, if you want to throw in Josh Allen, you can.
Well, if the top 2 seeds in each side are exactly what you just said.
Right. So if you look at those 4 quarterbacks and you look at who's having the best year this year, forget legacy, Super Bowls, and all the rest of it. It comes down to Tua versus Brock Purdy, and that thing might get decided on December 3rd.
Can anyone even try to make a case for someone other than Purdy to be league MVP right now?
You could make a case for Tua.
Try.
You could.
Go ahead.
Well, he's on a team that might set a record for most points in a year.
Okay.
And, highest points per game average. He authored a 70-point gem, and their offense, I think does he lead the league in yardage?
Yes, he does, by a good margin.
Yeah.
And by 350 yards approximately over Brock.
And they lead the league by over 100 yards in yards per game as a team, I think, offensively. So he is authoring a year offensively, and this is all we're talking about now. We're talking about offensive MVP. Tua is on a track to where he might shatter all the records.
He has 350 more yards than Brock. Brock has a higher completion percentage.
Yeah, less sexy.
Sure, of course. That's definitely the way it's going to be.
And I think Miami's averaging more than 100 yards more per game than the next team. I'm trying to remember where I saw that. I don't think that was Peter King.
Tua has thrown 5 interceptions.
Okay.
11 touchdowns, 5 picks. Brock Purdy, 9 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And as we mentioned, you're right. Tua is the number 2 rated quarterback in the league. Brock Purdy's number 1 by a wide margin. Wide margin. So, and the Dolphins have a loss. The 49ers do not.
Sure.
That loss was by 4 touchdowns. Tua does not have as good of a defense at his disposal as Brock does. Yeah, I guess, look, to me,
the case is an MVP case. It's not about teams or...
Well, but team record absolutely affects MVP
It does,
race.
but if you got a team that goes 16-1 and the other team goes 15-2, let's just say, if that's the way it breaks down, then I don't think that team record will be a deciding factor.
Can anyone do that? Honestly, I'd love to hear some of that. Let's have some of those conversations. Can anyone else even make a rational argument for someone other than Brock Purdy being the MVP if the vote were today? Tua is maybe the only other name that you could even bring up. I don't think he wins it. I think he can get all the second place votes if you want. And then there'll be some people in Miami who vote him number 1 or whatever. But I think he loses that argument from top to bottom. Sure, they had a 70-point game. That's, to me, more about the Broncos than it is about Tua. Yes, he's got 350 more yards, but he also has 5 interceptions, is well lower rated, and the 49ers have a better record and, quite frankly, a better win. I'm trying to think who have the Miami Dolphins beaten in their 4 wins. Any, real signature? They beat the Chargers, but their other 3 wins, Patriots, Broncos, Panthers, Giants. Patriots, Broncos, Giants. So yuck as far as those. The Niners have beaten some yuck as well.
Sure.
But Rams and Cowboys certainly are there too. Signatures. At the Steelers, as you look at it now,
I guess
is not as well. They're 3-2 and in first place.
Sure.
Is better than what the Dolphins have beaten.
Right.
Yeah, those are the 2 names. But Brock wins. He probably wins that. Don't you think?
No.
You don't?
I mean,
You would.
again, these are two different things. So I want you to ask that question that you're going to ask. Ask me.
Who would you vote for MVP right now?
Brock.
Okay.
Ask me the next question. Who will win? Tua might win because we're dealing with human beings, and Peter King is a guy who watches everything, and he actually was out here, and I know that he was at In-N-Out Burger in Alameda, and I can't wait to ask him not only what he talked about, but what he ordered.
The way you texted about this today, honestly,
shook you up.
It made it sound like you were at In-N-Out with Peter King. And I'm like, well, that changes everything.
Yeah.
Our whole interview today changes if you're at In-N-Out with Peter King.
I felt
right
like I
now
was
at 12:30 in the afternoon.
I felt like I was, and I think he was at In-N-Out yesterday.
Okay.
Before he flew the coop, and he had a conversation with the In-N-Out worker, not about Brock Purdy, but about Josh McDaniels.
Yes.
So I thought that was fascinating. So I do know that Peter was in town, and Peter had some great sound, some great conversations with Brock Purdy, which I can't wait to get into with Peter and before Peter comes on, because Peter is at the front of the Brock Purdy for MVP line.
He's on the front line, and he's got a vote.
And I don't have a vote, but I'm concerned that there aren't a lot of Peter Kings out there in terms of people who are actually watching Brock Purdy play football.
You think? I mean, he was just on Sunday Night Football, and I do believe it was maybe, did I see this right? Was it the highest rated game of the year so far? It was absolutely one of the most watched football games of the year.
Makes sense.
And he threw 4 touchdown passes and absolutely picked apart what was supposedly the best defense in football. I feel like people noticed. I really do.
They should.
If we had had this vote Saturday night, I'm with you, but it's not. It's Tuesday. And I really think, and again, I'm fully aware that it doesn't matter 5 weeks in. It doesn't matter yet. But to give context to what we're watching and where the credit goes and what the league thinks about it and whatnot, I have very little question in my mind that if a vote took place today, Brock Purdy's going to win MVP of the league.
I wonder.
Very little doubt in my mind.
I wonder. I mean, the East Coast bias is real. And, people who have maybe only seen one game of Brock Purdy, and he was fantastic. But the George Kittle flea flicker, was that really a Brock Purdy throw that was like, oh, my God, Brock Purdy, that throw? That was Brandon Ayuk running 2 safeties out of it. And I heard Baldy earlier this morning. What a great Baldy's breakdown. Mm-hmm. Ayuk runs a 9 route like the ball's going to him, and he draws both safeties. And then Kittle's able to kind of slide out a day before his birthday and get the flea flicker. So that was more of a Kyle Shanahan touchdown than it was a Brock Purdy touchdown. So, we could look at each and every touchdown that he had and we could assign credit. And I don't know if you watch that game and you think, oh my God, Brock Purdy, the guy was absolutely unbelievable.
You don't?
I do, because I watch Brock Purdy.
Right,
but if you're a neutral observer and you watch the George Kittle flea flicker touchdown.
That's this one touchdown. He's 4. He had 4 touchdowns. He was easily the most impressive player on the field in that game. Like we even talked about it yesterday. Ball got spread around. Kittle had 3 catches. They were all touchdowns. I mean, you spotlight the one flea flicker, which, by the way, I would argue, he threw the thing absolutely perfect accuracy as there was a defender bearing down on him right in his face, and he delivered with accuracy and took the hit. But why even spotlight that one play? There are a bunch of others. He was fantastic in that game.
And Peter King points out that he's the first quarterback in the next-gen era to have 4 touchdown passes outside the pocket. I think that was a stat in the
that's interesting.
In the Football Morning in America.
I didn't know those were all outside the pocket.
I didn't realize that was a thing. And if you think about all the touchdowns, I think they all were outside the pocket.
We rolled right on that first one. You had that right.
And
okay. Kind of doing it like when you count scores after a bad golf hole. So,
my God. I was in the trees.
I was there for 2.
Chop out in the bunker.
3.
Man.
Okay, duffed it 4, 5. Through 3
Put me down for a bogey.
Go the snowman. That's kind of what it feels like.
Put me down for a 5. Dude, you took 7 swings and you were in the water.
Yeah, but come on.
Give me a bogey.
Come on.
Let's go. What are we doing?
We're all friends here.
It's a practice round.
Here's what Baldy did say about Purdy.
He's quickly separating himself, not just from, I don't even know how anybody could watch and see what he's doing right now and say anything is ordinary or plug another guy in there. I just don't see it. I mean, he's separating himself from just basically every player in this league. Mm-hmm. I mean, forget about the quarterback position. He's playing a position higher than anybody's playing any position. He just took apart the number one defense in football, a team that had been living off turnovers, off of defensive touchdowns, and he didn't give them a chance once to have any of those kind of splash plays. And the guy simply doesn't make a mistake, which is just almost impossible to play the game.
Baldy on the morning roast, and you hear Bonte there in the background, kind of soaking it in what he's saying, because he didn't say he's just the best QB in the league. He's the best player, basically, at any position in the game in terms of how well he's playing that position versus his counterparts. When you hear that, I mean, and it's on a 5-0 team, that screams MVP.
Sure.
Does anybody think, and again, we're only 5 games in, does anybody think that right now, 5 weeks in, that Brock Purdy is not the MVP of the league? I would love to hear someone attempt to make the case. I don't think you can.
Well, again, these are two different things between, like, is he the MVP? Yeah. Does that mean that he's going to get every vote? No. And I think that's where the divide lies.
Well, sure. No, I mean, unanimous MVPs in all sports are very, very rare.
Or even unanimous. I mean, if it comes down to people who have seen maybe more Miami, or people who are smitten with the undefeated quarterback, Jalen Hurts, who hasn't had the same sort of a year, or the name value of a Patrick Mahomes, I don't think it's just as easy as, Brock Purdy, he's never lost. They're 5-0. He hasn't thrown a pick. He's the guy. I think that he is. And I'm not trying to say that he's not, and I'm not trying to get into some semantics argument or trying to pick some silly fight. I just don't think that the national narrative is yet on board with what we're feeling here in the Bay.
I feel like what you're saying is something that exists a lot in college football. I certainly acknowledge East Coast bias, but the idea that NFL MVP voters haven't, quote, sort of like seen every team, seen every player. I know it's only Red Zone channel, but a lot of us get here Monday morning and you feel like you saw everything.
Sure.
And I don't think there's an excuse in 2023 to be an MVP voter and be like, wow, I live in Baltimore, so I haven't seen this Purdy guy yet. Like, it's the NFL. We all see everything. Like, there is no shortage of access to everything. And then even when you do, even if you do just want to arrive on your computer screen and look at numbers, again, he's blowing out the competition there as well. Tua's got a lot of yards, but 11 TDs to 5 picks versus 9-0, that's kind of a blowout on the old touchdown to interception ratio.
I suppose. I mean,
just over 2-1 to 9-0.
The null set
9 to
is
nothing.
What it would be.
Yeah. 9 to it doesn't exist. There is no TD to interception ratio.
Right.
There's no interceptions.
But if you look at Tua's yardage and you look at a 70-point game, and if you're not somebody who's watched every snap of every team in every game, then you might see things in a different way. And that's
of course.
Peter King, having been out here and being familiar with the Shanahan system and the Niners and all the rest of it, he sees it in a little bit more of an astute fashion than some other voter. And I don't know who the voters are, Mark, and I would imagine there's probably 80 to 100 voters for the offensive player of the year.
Well, we could ask him that. I don't know how many there are.
Yeah, and I would wonder. But I know that he is definitely a card-carrying member of the Brock is the MVP club 28% of the year in.
You're hearing Baldy say it. Michael Irvin went on the herd yesterday, said he'd take Purdy over Justin Herbert. I think you might be selling the national eyes short. I think they noticed. I don't think the vote would even be close today if it were today, which it's not.
Yeah.
But
another 13 weeks.
Yeah. Does anybody think right now Brock Purdy does not deserve to be MVP of the league?